a production of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Visit us at mesachamber.org.
Always predictive insights. We put together kind of Arizona political climate update. Let's be honest, especially right now. Oh, you see this poll or this and the other. There's just tons of information flying at you left and right. And so for this is just kind of give you a quick update by the numbers of what's going on. And like I say, we do a pretty decent job. And for us, we last election we were 5 for 5. So, and then recently we expanded out to Nevada and Utah in the off year. So not just doing Arizona, but moved to Nevada. Nevada is known as a notoriously hard state to poll. They had their primaries a month ago. We actually nailed the both races. We had a record, the governor and Senate race. So the whole adage of you wait till election day, or we can let you know when's ahead of time. So which is nice. But we'll go through kind of the numbers, say the political climate. So this is the presidential. And by the way, I have my good standing here. Or you want me?
You're good.
Oh, okay. I apologize. So presidential job approval trending over time, it's kind of interesting. It's actually our trend line, I think, goes even farther back than that, but it's like, makes me feel old. And so we've been tracking this for a while, but presidential job approval, so there's a couple key indicators we really look at in midterm elections, because midterms are very much about turnout and motivation, like who shows up. Unlike the general election, everybody shows up, essentially. So this one is much more interesting, but right now, presidential job approval is one of these key indicators to watch, because the incumbent party, it's typically a referendum on them, because who's in power? Right now, Democrats have all three levers of power: they have president, Senate, and Congress. So they're clearly captaining the ship. So, but right now, presidential job approval, Biden is at -11. And it's interesting, remember when he started, he was in a great spot. When he started out, like, oh, Joe is great, everybody likes him. And then you see that massive dip. That's right when the Afghanistan withdrawal happened. Wasn't the greatest, right? And then from there was those economic woes and inflation, everything we're seeing. He just hasn't been able to recover, and of course has really no ability to kind of get out in front of it or ride a bike. And so, come on, it's a fact. I'm not making it up. I told you, only facts in this presentation. So Biden. One of the things, so this is just, typically with your base of support, like even your incumbent president, right? So among Democrats, breaking it out by age, 18 to 54 on the top, 55 plus on the bottom. It's interesting, younger Democrats are definitely not too excited about Joe. And so compared to the older part, and it's interesting, only 22% of 18 to 54-year-old Democrats have a strong approval of their Democratic president that they probably all voted for, right? But at 55 plus, significantly better. But you see there's a bit of that age disconnect as well. Yeah, so that issue you're seeing, and I think that's going to play a factor in the midterms, because we know that 18 to 54 crowd is the lowest. Did you know in Arizona, what we're projecting for turnout, our electorate, the people who vote, it will be 70% will be 55 or older. 70! So that 18 to 54 is only 30%. So not only Biden on issues, so remember that overall we just looked at, we're like, hey, he's -12 on job approval. So you have his broken out approval. Over here at the side is the net. So that's just among those that have a positive and negative opinion, is that overall good or bad? Like, hey, I have an opinion of you. Is that good? Is it very positive, or is it negative? Where does it sit? So he's -12 overall, but on all these key issues, the only one he's somewhat positive is COVID. He's +2. But like dealing with, like, how do you approve of him on the economy? -24 points. Dealing with China, -22. Immigration, -28. And this is among Arizona's registered voter population. I think, for example, this sample is 938 registered voters. But here's the thing, it wasn't always this bad, but like a lot can change. That's what's funny about politics. A lot can change in a year, because a year ago, it was like, oh, Biden's great. But here's the difference. So May, so the blue bar is where he's at in May. Yellow is where he's at in just this recent May, so a year later. And then the red is the shift. So like, hey, that changed. Like in a year, is that good or bad? You see his overall job approval shifted -22 points. That's not a direction you want to go in. Immigration, Arizonans thought he did a bad job starting out, still do. But COVID, remember, he was +2. That was his only positive category, right? He was +32 a year ago. And now he's only 2, so that was a -30-point shift. And the economy, yeah, -35. And uniting the country, remember, there's one of the big themes. Hey, vote for Joe Biden. He won't be like Trump, being divisive. And
everyone.
yeah, he's gonna unite the country. Here's the thing, voters, they're not really buying it. They were +4, now they're -19, 23-point shift, wrong direction. And so this is the other key indicator. So presidential job approval, we just saw, not great for Joe or the Democrats. But when we look at top issues, how they trended over time, right now, the top 3 issues, especially the top 2, very much benefit Republicans. So think of your issue set, your top 3 issues as like a 3-legged stool. Last election, it was the opposite. Education and healthcare and jobs and the economy were the top 3. Immigration wasn't even the top 3. It was actually 4th heading into elections, and education and healthcare benefit Democrats more, which I'll show you here. So here it is. So this is party affiliation broken out by those same issues. And you see that immigration, that's why I joke, if you're running for as a Republican in Arizona, who doesn't have a border ad, right? I mean, pretty much everyone. It's like you have to check that box. Well, why? Look at the polling. 44% of Republicans say immigration is their top issue. So it's clearly the dominant one, but that's where you see everyone's beating the drum on the Republican side there. But when you look at the Democrats, education and healthcare definitely are stronger for them on their issues. But again, those 2 are not exactly very important right now. And jobs and economy is hands down going to be the main general election issue this year. It'll be jobs and economy, secondarily immigration, but jobs and economy is clearly the one that, as hyper partisan as people have become these days, that's one thing they can all agree on. But again, that issue set, it's the shoes on the other foot compared to last election where the issue sets very much benefited Democrats. Now the shoes on the other foot is benefiting Republicans. So that's your other indicator. Oh, last thing on issues. So just looking at parental status. So parents of minor children. So that's like, current parent. You have a kid 18 or less in your house. Parents of adult children. So you've had the experience of having a child, but they're just not there right now. And then non-parents never had that experience of, what it's like to be a parent. But so among those parents of minor children, current parents, jobs and economy, hands down, far more important to them, immigration, less. But parents of adult children, so typically older, maybe grandparents, immigration is actually more important than jobs and the economy. And then non-parents, jobs and the economy is a little bit stronger than immigration, but it matters of your audience, who you're talking to, what you're turning on. So this is a chart of midterm turnout over the last 40 years. So there's a percentage based on registered voters. So this has been our turnout. So our last midterm, 2018, we actually saw nearly the highest in 40 years, which is interesting. And remember, the midterm before that, look at that, 2014, it was 48% roughly? Pretty low, right? And here's the thing, lower turnout elections will benefit typically Republicans more. But what's interesting, so from 2014 to 18, here's a question. Who's at 17% more that voted, right? Like that extra 17% that came out to vote, what was that composition? It's funny, when you look at the demographics, they were younger, they were more independent, and they were more female, but typically more groups that typically lean a little bit more Democratic. But remember, what was happening in 2018? Trump was elected in 2016, and they had the US Senate and Congress, so they had all 3 levers of power, and he's tweeting whatever, and the left was angry at Trump and stuff, so they're seeing red. So that group that was really motivated, that they typically didn't come out to vote, that group, it was basically the best Democrats performance they've had ever. Because typically the midterms, it's about an R+11 advantage, so Republicans have about a double-digit edge. It'll end up being about R+6.5, R+7. But again, it's a little bit stronger, but we're expecting turnout to be probably close to what that is again. The only difference is it's going to just be more Republican, a little less Democrat. But it'll be close to that, maybe a little less. But approval ratings, why do those matter? So this just shows, I pulled this off from Ballot, just because they've been tracking for decades. And so it's one of the things that throughout history, the ability of president to maintain seats in Congress has been made clear time and time again. Remember in Congress, Republicans hold about a 6, 8 seat advantage, or no, Democrats do, I'm sorry. Democrats hold a slight advantage in Congress. So the question is, hey, is Congress gonna flip? Well, the answer is gonna be yes, the only question is by how much. So for example, US satisfaction back in 2010 on Obama's first run, where his first midterm, he lost 63 seats, 63, a ton. He was at 22% US satisfaction. Right now it's 16 for Joe Biden. We don't know that, but not looking great. Economically, back Obama, when they again lost those 63 seats, it was minus 31 voters gave them in economic conditions. Biden's currently minus 32. And then finally, just showing them all together. But basically, when you look at where it's been historically, so the answer is, unless something turns around real quick, Republicans will take back the House. There's just the question is by how much. But we may see, the red waves are coming. Sorry. You hear a voice, right? And you're like, it's like I'm narrating. And so U.S. senators, right, where they're at, it's interesting. Kyrsten Sinema, you notice she's only -2 net favorable. Before she was like minus, 10 or 11 when the whole, she was blocking the filibuster and kind of got some pressure from the Nationals. It's funny, just like in politics, over time, your numbers will just start to kind of recover because she really hasn't been in the limelight nearly as much, right, for the last few months. But Mark Kelly, as bad of a year it is for Democrats, that guy is frankly doing about as good a job as he possibly can, like positioning himself. Good, bad, or indifferent, he's plus 11 when it comes to his favorability. Here's a fun one. So this is Sinema and Kelly's favorability, but by party. So Republicans, independents in the middle, Democrats on the bottom. So this is no joke. This is a true number. So like you see right here, among Republicans, favorability, Kyrsten Sinema is plus 8%.
Wow.
She's more favorable than unfavorable among Republicans.
Wow.
I know. I had to double check that number. Mark Kelly, on the other hand, minus 43. Remember, Mark Kelly, traditional Democrat. Kyrsten Sinema going a little bit more of an off-beaten path, right? But among Democrats, Mark Kelly plus 71 with his base, so he's super strong with his base. Kyrsten Sinema is actually minus 10 with her base. And then independents, Mark Kelly's actually plus 13, Sinema's minus 5. And of course, Republicans don't like Mark. And then Sinema, they like her because, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Right, that's right.
There you go. And so 2022 midterm update, the last indicator is midterm enthusiasm. This is an interesting one. For the ever since we've been tracking all this stuff in this midterm, especially, is that Republicans have held a double-digit lead this entire time. Up until just recently, between our March and May poll, the big difference was, I believe, the Roe v. Wade decision came down, but basically Republicans got a little tighter there, and it mainly was driven, a lot of people are like, oh, it's because Democrats, they're all pumped up for the Roe v. Wade thing. And I was like, actually, it was the drop was really just a little drop in enthusiasm among Republican women. It's interesting. But here's the thing, look at independents. They are not pumped.
No.
Sorry. Independents, that purple line? Independents are not excited.
Right, yeah,
Because no one's really talking to them, huh?
More than they have.
Yeah, they're trending up, right? They're keeping their powder dry. Well, exactly. And so midterm enthusiasm by party just shows that broken out a little bit more, but you see that, again, this is the first time. I think that's, I'm curious to see, I think it'll probably revert back up. I just think it was just kind of a short-term dip for Republicans, but either way, they're kind of tightened up, but again, independents, they're just not fired up to vote, because again, midterms are very much more about the parties compared to presidential. So, all right, let's get into the midterm, the GOP races, right? Primary races, I hear they're pretty exciting, what I hear. So midterm update, let's look at, okay, let's be honest. This is the, I don't know if I had the slide here, but when it comes, we ask voters what they're most interested in. Governor's the top, US Senate's number 2, then it's Congress, and then it's like down ticket statewide and state-led. But anyway, so this is the hottest ticket in town right now, the GOP primary. It's getting a ton of national news because even Steve Bannon said it just recently in this NBC News article. He goes, if you want to see the perfect proxy of the battle between the establishment and the Trump or MAGA movement, look no further than the governor's race in Arizona between Kari Lake and Karen Taylor Robson. Agree or not, but that is absolutely, battleground of what we're seeing kind of play out across the country, this fight between MAGA and the GOP. Anyway, so you see what the changes are in the race is that we have April, where the polling was there, where they were in June, and then the even darker one is that June with Salmon out of the race. Because one of the things with Salmon, we actually polled, we said, hey, what's it, how's the race right now? Hey, now Salmon's not running, which he ended up dropping out endorsing, not running, how would you vote? So by doing that, we're able to see exactly how that impact was. And Matt Salmon, when he dropped out, he only had 6% vote, right? So he backed out, and you see that Karen Taylor Robeson, with Salmon in, she was at 31, Lake was at 39. With Salmon out, she went from 31 to 35, and then Lake went from 39 to 40. So we see that in the undecideds or unsureds didn't move at all. So really that support, that Salmon endorsement basically kept Robeson competitive. Because without that, she'd be still about 8 points down heading into early voting. Not a great spot. So, but Robeson's Lake and Salmon support was mainly captured by Salmon. So showing that heading into that early voting, Kari Lake actually has a 5-point edge. There's still 21% undecided. And the other thing is, okay, what do these undecided voters look like from a persona or demographic perspective? And so when you look at this, that 21% of undecided voters, they actually tend to lean, they are more female, they're actually older, 75 plus. Also, 2/3 of them are undecided in the US Senate contest. 81% of this group is gonna vote by mail, and then they tend to be more white and also live more in Maricopa County. And finally, the biggest crosstab to look at least for me in the Republican primaries, is that this question, we asked this question, like, are you more of a supporter of Trump or the party? Neither or both. And that really separates out like that division you're currently seeing. So right now, that group of supporters that are undecided, they look to be actually a bit more favorable to Robeson. Not saying they will be, but again, based on demographics, based on her support, because Robeson is doing really great with supporters of the Republican Party. Lake is doing really great with supporters of Donald Trump. Of course, Lake's endorsed by Donald Trump. Robeson's endorsed by everyone else.
Yeah.
I feel like half the room probably is endorsed. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm just kidding. And so when we look at this item, is that so that group that's undecided, they're 43% of them are supporters of the party, compared to only 24% of Trump. So again, that group looks a little bit more favorable. Yes, sir, in the back.
The National Party or the Arizona Republican Party?
Just the Republican Party in general, because that's the division. When you get down to the core of that issue, is that you have the party that's been there, and then in this group, it's kind of been evolved from like what the Tea Party was, but it's kind of the anti-establishment, anti-Washington, anti-powers that be, which I get it. It's a classic case of the have and have-nots. I just told a reporter yesterday, it's like the Great Gatsby. Right? They're sitting there across the river, and they're like,
I want that.
Yeah, but it's true. Like, and again, just call, and that's just what we're seeing play out. And so, anyway, so that gives you kind of a look at that. So for the generic ballot for the statewide, so in all of our generic ballots, Republicans are ahead, because again, it's a very pro-Republican year. So Republicans actually hold a 3-point edge on the Republican on the generic gubernatorial contest. And so, but what's interesting, 23% are unsure. And that's kind of a high rate, but this is so funny because when people talk about independents, and this chart probably shows it the best, so you got your Republicans, independents, and Democrats, so it's this thing, but now we break it down, is that Republicans are plus 80, right? So R's vote R, D's vote D, Dems plus 78, and then independents, you battle for everyone in the middle. Not exactly true, because those independents aren't truly independents. It's a complete false positive. Because look at it, you have a quarter that are actually Republicans, you have a quarter that are actually Democrats. It's really that 45% or 1/6 of the electorate, which I like to call is the true independents, who are the actual truly persuadables. When you look down in their persona, they have unfavorable opinion of the Republican Party, they got an unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party. These are true independents. Like they don't like any of the status quo in general, but they're the ones truly up for grabs. And last quick thing on the governor's race, since I get asked so much about it, what else can we do? So heading into early voting, and again, I don't have sides, I don't care, I just care about being accurate. And so when you look at name ID and everything else, one is, like Donald Trump, 100% name ID, no surprise, right? But check this out, Carrie Lake has 96% name ID. She's incredibly known, and she's been outspent an incredible amount on paid media compared to Robeson, but a lot of earned media. So Lake has a 96% name ID. Robeson slightly behind at 88, but the big differentiator between the two is only 13% have not formed an opinion of Lake. And 26% have not formed an opinion of Robeson. Meaning, you're like, what does that mean, Mike? Well, you're like, throwing these numbers at me, what am I? So what it is that going into early voting, basically Carrie Lake's at her zenith, like she is maxed out. They know who she is, and she has been defined, good or bad, she's been defined. So she has no room to grow. So she's maxed out, so her thing, she's got to hold on to her base as long as she can. Robeson, though, still has an opportunity to grow and for people to form opinions, and with her having lots of money, that's a potential there, but that's just the difference in the growth factor. But Lake peaked right at the right time. U.S. Senate primary. Blake Masters could be the master of his own destiny. In this race, this Senate race, it's interesting. Attorney General Mark Brnovich has been literally in first place from the entirety of this contest. He's now currently in third place. But Blake Masters currently saw the biggest bump. But what happened in early June? He got Trump's endorsement. He has plenty of money, not that known, but with Trump's endorsement coupled with the money, he's been able to move the needle. So he's got the most momentum right now. Jim Lehman has been spending a ton, as well as Masters. The difference is, just hasn't been effective. He's only moved 2 points from April to now. And if I spent $6 million or whatever, I'd expect more than 2 points. But we still have a high share of undecideds, but we're starting to see that come down. But the big thing in this race is that none of them were able to really break out of the pack or differentiate. And so we're starting to see some movement, but right now, it's basically between Masters and Lehman. Brnovich is done, McGuire's done, Olson's done. So it's really between those two, but Lehman's messaging is all over the board, so I would guess there. And then Senate primary, this is kind of a look at what these undecideds look like. Compared to the gubernatorial one, this group, it's mainly younger folks. Because the other one was what, 75 plus? So these undecideds, what do they look like? They're actually more younger, and also 37% are undecided in the governor's race, but we saw what in that previous one, 60-some% were undecided in this race. But vote by mail, 80% that way, majority Maricopa County, and Caucasian vote. And then the last thing is that group left over, less party supported than the other one. It's only plus 14 Republican folks compared to 25% of Trump folks. And again, Trump's been endorsed very early on that other race. And this one more recently, so there's more Trump folks around then. But we still got a good amount of party folks too. And then, all right, US Senate race, Mark Kelly. So remember, in every generic ballot, whether it's like Congress, US Senate, gubernatorial, whatever, and every one, Republicans are winning. But you have Mark Kelly versus a generic Republican, Mark Kelly is leading by 1 point. Because, look how he's doing, like Hispanic Latinos, he's plus 17, he's plus 6 with women. Heck, he's even plus 1 in Republican-leaning Maricopa County. And then in the suburbs, remember, this is what is the biggest indicator, or the biggest item that made Arizona a battleground state, wasn't population growth and these other items. The number one thing that did that was the suburban shift. The suburbs really shifted from Republican to Democrat during the time of Trump. But now we're seeing those suburbs really shift back. But that suburban shift is really what has made us a battleground state, to be honest. But Republicans are currently plus 3 with that group. So again, we're seeing the pendulum shift back the other way. But Mark Kelly basically in as good a position as he can be, and the big thing is, he's doing well with independents. We saw in that generic, what, the gubernatorial was quarter to quarter. He's at 36 though. So Kelly's plus 9 with independents. Again, he planted that flag right in the middle. Granted, his voting record probably isn't very middle of the road. But again, perception is reality. And so you see here that Mark, again, very much like a traditional Democrat, but again, he's positioned pretty well for, as well as he can be, given the environment. And then last thing, state of the down ticket GOP races. Spoiler alert. Oh wait, hold on. Next one was spoiler. And then, so this one, first is, okay, races I was alluding to earlier. Okay, what are voters like really paying attention to? Number one, who's gonna be the next CEO of the state? And as a business group, you can respect that, right? And so, number one, governor, but then Senate, And then U.S. House, but look at the difference, only 34% for U.S. House, but then you have AG, State Senate, Secretary of State, both in the mid-20s, and then State House at 19. So again, you can see kind of that level of interest among voters. But what's interesting, remember we're looking at what, Treasurer, Attorney General, Secretary of State, so this is just so spoiler alert, in these statewide down tickets, the biggest number who's winning are the people that haven't formed an opinion. They really haven't decided, because Secretary of State, so the red bar is percentage of voters that have decided, and then the light red is the number that has been, that are undecided. And so just to show this is that the biggest thing, it's super undecided, but people go, hey, is that common? It actually is. So I saw this like, I don't know, 3 election cycles ago, and as I've tracked it, you'll see these numbers literally every month. If you pulled monthly since January till now, you'd literally get these same numbers. And it's not till voters get their early ballot do you see this number start to drop. So this will drop about 20 points in unsure once they have their ballot. But even before election day, you'll still have maybe 30, 40% unsure in the statewide contest. But what's interesting, see the statewide, those 72, 67, 71, and those percentage like Treasurer 29, Attorney General 33. Hey, look at that. The level of interest, right? Anyways, but and also the last quick point on this, people go, why is that? I go, but think about it. The governor and Senate race compared to the down tickets, if you were to match them up by the numbers based on paid media, how much they've spent on broadcasts and everything else, and then how much earned media, how many articles and everything else that are out there, if you quantify that and then compare to the down tickets, they're not even in the same zip code, right? Like what they're spending in a week in the governor and Senate race is what they all spend combined together. But it's a two-part thing. One is a money factor. The second one, frankly, the media should probably give a little more attention to the down ticket races for voters can be more informed to make their decisions.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'll get on the media. So here, I'll just quick run through. Remember, there's a massive amount of undecideds. So really, these just about in all these races, except for like treasurer, or maybe like superintendent of public instruction, there's just people with a slight edge. But basically, it's a toss-up. Like with 75% undecided, all these folks are in single digits. Remember, Abe Hamada and Rodney Glassman are the only two with a bunch of money in that race. And Abe actually got Trump's endorsement, but I think it'll probably come down to either Rodney or Abe in that contest. And then you got Secretary of State, and we got our groups here. Mark Fincham actually has a slight edge. One of my analysts is like, oh, he has a huge lead. I'm like, oh yeah, huge, right? 14 to, 6 or whatever, 72. I'm like, okay, slight advantage. But here's the thing, in Nevada, just recently, there was a guy who's like the Mark Fincham of Nevada, a guy named Jim Marchant. He actually won pretty handedly in his primary for Secretary of State. And he's a known election denier and everything else, and it made huge news after the fact. But now you're seeing a lot of news on this because of that last one, just saying where the media is they're really making this out between the civil war between the party, basically. And then Treasurer Yee, just for the past name ID for being an incumbent, has a bit of an edge in that race. Also, she has more money than the other two. And then here we go for Superintendent of Public Instruction. You have that Tom Horn, there's a slight edge. However, it's mainly because of past name ID. He's been elected before to statewide office. He's been around a long time. And remember, 70% of the electorate is 55 and older. They've been around for a bit. So again, they will remember some of the folks that have been there. But again, it's still very much a toss-up because with 66% unsure. There we go. Gubernatorial primary on the Democrat side. Spoiler alert, Hobbs is going to win. I mean, from a money perspective, but then also even in the polling, and even when that racial discrimination thing came at her, basically Lopez and the other candidates in the race weren't able to capitalize, and if they weren't able to capitalize then, so this one's kind of a foregone conclusion, right? Last thing, abortion, and I'll get out of your hair. Fun topic. And so, by the way, you ever look at Gallup's tracking on issues? So they'll do, they've had it over decades, and they'll have it on guns, the economy, abortion, or pro-life, right? on all those ones like guns, immigration, economy, that will all move actually over time. If you look at people's opinions or their positions on abortion, whether pro-life, pro-choice, they don't move over time. It's like the one tracker that just doesn't, because think about it. How many people just flip-flop on, oh, I'm pro-choice today, and then next day, like, I'm pro-life, right? It's usually a significant life event, but those views are pretty static, to say the least. But when you ask Arizona, hey, where do you sit on, how do you identify? Are you pro-choice or pro-life? Actually, majority say, 54% say pro-choice, 31% say they're pro-life, 15% neither. But opinion on abortion, there's 3 bars here. Best way to describe it, legal under any circumstances, so that's white, legal under certain circumstances, gray area, and then illegal under all circumstances, so black. So black, white, gray area on the issue, right? It's all or nothing, or hey, it's actually something in the middle. It's interesting, only 13% believe it should be illegal in all circumstances, and then about, I don't know, 9 and 10 believe it should be legal in some capacity, with 46% kind of in that gray area. And what's fascinating about the breakout on this is that you would think, so among those pro-choice and pro-life folks, who do you think's more unbendable on this issue? What'd you guess? Pro-life or pro-choice folks? That's what I thought too. It's the opposite.
No way.
Pro-life folks are actually the most, like, I guess, in that area, in that gray area in the middle, their majority of them are actually over there. Among the pro-choice crowd, like good 40% or so are in the, it's gotta be completely open and completely legal. So it's funny, the pro-choice crowd is actually the most, is much more unbendable on the issue compared to the pro-life crowd. That's something. And so impact of voting by party, we asked, hey, you know, this abortion stuff, the Roe v. Wade decision, is that gonna impact your decision to vote when you're going? And it's interesting, Republicans, Independents, same level, but Democrats said, yeah, it's gonna be more of an important thing for me. But the big thing for me is that I'm kind of hesitant on how much this is gonna actually help in the election, because if it was a good economy going on, yes, I think it'd be much more impactful. However, record high inflation, you got, supply chain issues, the pain at the pump, so you got all these economic ones, and typically pocketbook issues will override social issues. And that's the thing. And plus, there's really not any ballot initiatives or anything on the ballot to kind of rally behind, and none of the candidates are really talking about this issue either. So again, I don't think it's going to have as big of an impact as Democrats are going to hope it is, but right now they don't really have a lot to glom onto. Anyways, and then methodology, it's accurate, and making sure it's reflective. So a big thing about polling is that anyone can do a poll. I 100% get it. The big thing is making sure it's reflective of your audience, right? So you have the right composition so it is representative. Because again, polling, I can go out and ask every single person in the state this question, or if I have a randomized statistically significant sample with best survey practices, guess what? I can get the same result with a 95% certainty every time just by using the voodoo that we do. So anyways, that's the thing. And then the biggest thing, thank you. If anyone has any questions, have to answer.
I've got a quick question.
Yes.
So you showed a generic slide with Senator Kelly versus a Republican. Have you done any polling with a Hobbs versus Kerry or Karen?
Yeah, Karen actually polls about 3 or 4 points better than Lake head to head. And that's one thing we know, like, so people ask, okay, who's better on a general election matchup? If Rose's the nominee, I think it's a slam dunk, especially in this Republican year. She's got the resources, everything else, and also not a ton to hit on. And you're seeing this thing where Democrats right now are really playing, like, starting to jump in primaries and trying to boost it. What is it? They just did, Democratic Party did a press release thanking Karen Taylor Robeson for her past contributions to Democrats. And again, normally you don't see parties will mingle in with others, and so what they're trying to do is that because it's such a bad Democratic year, they've kind of given up and they've reverted to this new strategy of like, well, we're going to actually support these people that are completely opposite to their base, like people they absolutely hate, but they're propping them up, hoping, because their assumption is that, hey, there'll be an easier pick-off in the general election because among independent voters are very, very much more moderate, and so there's more to the right end of the spectrum candidates are, again, it gives them a bit of an opening because a a more moderated one or kind of center right would be better. Yeah.
To Mariah's point, who does better against Mark Kelly?
They're all within like 2 points of each other. Yeah, all of them. You would be within 2 points of them.
Go for it, Tom.
Seriously, Josh. Huh?
Does Brnovich have a,
You'd be within the margin of Brno.
so it doesn't matter?
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Right now, yes. Right now it doesn't. Yeah. You could be right in the hunt.
I could just see him doing better against Kelly as opposed, for the same reason you just said, if the Democrats want Carrie Lake,
Mhm.
because Katie Hobbs has a better shot. I can see if Blake Masters got it, Kelly's, yeah.
Correct. Well, correct, and that might be the case. The problem is Brno, though, is still nearly not as defined or known as Robeson, because Brno's not spent a ton of money. It hasn't a lot of resources left to spend, with Robeson spending a ton. So.
Well, wow, we have had a really meaningful morning, and thank you so much, Mike. Good you have your enthusiasm for your job.
Stay connected to Mesa Chamber social media, email newsletters, Monday morning message, and mesachamber.org to always know what's happening at your Mesa Chamber.